Hey everyone, I'd like to welcome you to this cello yoga workshop. My name is Mia, the creative cellist, and I'm really excited to welcome you all here today. This is a re-record of the workshop that we did yesterday. We had some technical issues, so I wasn't able to record the live version, so I'm making a new version for anybody who didn't get to see the workshop. So I'm just going to pull up some slides and we'll get started. Hey, welcome to the Cello Yoga Workshop. My name's Marian Elizabeth Arthur, and in the music world, people know me as Mia, the creative cellist. And I'm known as a creative cellist because not only do I have a classical background, but I also improvise, I songwrite, and I compose. So I do a lot of really creative and diverse stuff with the cello. So that's why I'm called Mia, the creative cellist. I have a Bachelor of Performance from the University of Toronto, and there I studied with Shauna Rolston, Simon Fryer, Winona Zelenka, and I attended a lot of master classes, including master classes with the St. Lawrence String Quartet and Yo-Yo Ma. So those are kind of my classical credentials. As well, I also have teacher training from the Royal Conservatory of Music and the Suzuki Association of the Americas. And I've worked with a number of different organizations in various capacities, often as a performer or a composer. And I've also received a number of grants and awards. So these are some of the organizations I've worked with, just so you know that you're in the right place to get advice about playing the cello. And I'm also the creator of this program, Cello Yoga, the complete mind and body program to play the cello with total freedom. So this workshop is part of the Cello Yoga Complete program. When you sign up for the Cello Yoga Complete program, you get the online course as well as access to all these workshops. So these workshops are often a really great way to kind of get an idea of what it's like to work with me and to know if you want to continue into the program or if you want to have one-on-one coaching with me. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I want to talk about why and how I founded Cello Yoga so you can get an idea of my background and what we're going to be doing today in the course. So I created Cello Yoga because when I was a university student, something happened to me that changed the way that I approached cello playing kind of forever. It was sort of a revelation to me. What happened was that in the first month of my university career, I suffered an injury to my left hand, in particular my pinky and all the way down to my forearm. And this left me not able to play for a whole month. So it was at that moment that I realized that I needed to get smart about the way that I was practicing, or I wouldn't be able to keep doing a lot of the things that I love, including playing the cello. So this journey about thinking about the ergonomics of playing the cello has led me sort of to reject many traditional practices. In classical music, there tends to be this unhealthy culture of pushing through pain, and that pain could be mental or physical, spiritual or emotional. And people do this in the pursuit of excellence. So it's a very noble goal. But what I've discovered over my career is that a lot of people are finding themselves in a place of mental exhaustion, physical exhaustion, and they're not able to play. They burn out, they injure themselves. So I've been thinking over the last many years about how to create a system that's healthy for cellists and holistic and takes them into consideration as a whole person. So I've created this system, the Cello Yoga system. It's based on mindfulness wisdom, sports psychology, and up-to-date practices in music education that helps cellists not only to play better, but to have fun doing it. And that's really a big goal of mine, is to make sure that people are feeling healthy and happy and having fun while they're playing the cello. So in this workshop today, we're gonna learn about the 3 pillars of great cello playing, and we're gonna be looking at a specific topic in each area. So by the end of the workshop, you're gonna have the tools that you need to play with more focus, flexibility, and freedom. So let's dive into what the topics are for today's workshop. So the first topic is going to be a flexibility topic, and we're going to be using mudras, which are hand postures in the yogic tradition, as well as weights to increase our hand, wrist, and arm awareness and strength. So that's going to be our first topic. Our focus topic is going to be techniques to reduce performance anxiety. So in this section, I'm going to talk about some of the ways that I use to help people reduce their anxiety in a performance or a lesson situation, and then we're going to have a bit of a Q&A. With this re-record, the Q&A is just going to be some questions that I'll put up on the screen for you to contemplate on your own. And then the last topic is going to be a freedom topic. And this is really fun. I'm going to show you kind of my really, really simple way to create improvisations or compositions for the cello using the circle of fifths and what I call the chord tone method. So we're going to be using chord tones to create improvisations in a way that even if you've never composed before, you're going to be able to do this. And it's also a really great way to help your students, if you're a teacher, get into composing. So let's start with flexibility. What are some ways to increase flexibility and strength in the hands, the arms, and the wrists? Obviously, these are our most important assets as cellists. Looking after our hands and our wrists and our arms is very important. So let's talk about some ways that we can increase the flexibility and strength in our hands. And why do we need to develop this flexibility and strength in our hands? We want to avoid injury and arthritis. We want to play with better intonation. We want to be able to respond and play faster. We want to have better endurance, and we want to be able to correct imbalances and weaknesses in our muscles and tendons. A lot of cellists I've noticed have very imbalanced hands, so they'll have some fingers that are quite strong and other fingers that are quite weak. So we're going to be kind of working on ways that we can increase the balance in your hands so that they respond equally. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about mudras. So mudras, in Sanskrit, this word means seal. And these are particular hand postures that yogis use. And yogis believe that these hand postures have benefits to both the mind and the body. And in particular interest to cellists is the ways that we can benefit from being able to put our hands into certain postures and how that can help us to improve our awareness and flexibility on the cello. So I use these as warm-ups and as ways to think about my fingers and to help students to increase their fine motor skills. So you can do these mudras away from the cello, and then I'm also going to show you how you can modify them through movement and use them on the cello to create certain shapes and a feeling of ease in your hands. So we're going to start with this first mudra. This mudra is called the Adi Muja. And in the Sanskrit tradition or the yogi tradition, they believe that this expands the lung capacity, stimulates blood flow, and improves the function of the vital organs. For our purposes, what I found is that just making fists and tucking your thumb in increases the tension in your hand and gets you to really start warming up your hands and noticing what's going on in your hand. And what I like to do with this mudra is squeeze the hand really, really tight and then let it go really fast. And this is a really great way to warm up your hands and your thumbs, just like this. So with these mudras, there's 10 of them. We're going to kind of go through them quickly, but if you were working on these mudras on your own, you'd want to take your time. Really get in touch with your breath. Take deep breaths while you're doing this and notice anything that's happening in your hands. So you can try this with both the hands. One thing to notice is whether one hand feels different than the other hand. Often that's the case. I'm right hand dominant, so my right hand often feels much stronger than the other, but sometimes that means there also can be held tension in the hand. Okay, so that's the Adi Muja. Great for tension release in your hand. This one here, the Anjali Mudra, I love for its benefits to the wrists and the forearms. So you're going to be bringing your hands together kind of in a prayer position. Yogis often use this when they're settling into a meditation. You've probably seen this as quite an iconic feature of yogi practice. And what I love about this for cellists is if you take this shape and you move it back and forth towards you and away from you, you get a really nice warm up in the wrists and the forearms and all the way into the top of your arms here as well. It's like to move them back and forth like this. That's the Anjali Mudra. This mudra here, the Apam Mudra, it's part of a series of mudras where the thumb comes to meet the fingers. And for cello players, I find this mudra especially interesting and helpful because it helps cellists to know and be aware of the shapes in their hands between the thumb and the fingers. So when you take your two middle fingers and you place them opposing the thumb, you'll see that the other fingers are sticking out like this. This is kind of, if I bring this up to the camera, this is a lot like the shape that we would teach students when they first begin, this round C for cello shape. And you can play with this shape and increase your flexibility in your fingers by moving the other fingers back and forth like this. Try to move them together. And what I've discovered with this mudra, if you put this onto your cello, so you take your cello for a minute, put your hands in first position, make the shape of this mudra with the thumb behind the second and third fingers, and then you're going to tap the other two fingers, so the fourth finger, the first finger, together in synchronous action on your fingerboard up and down. And this is a really great exercise for both developing the flexibility in your fingers and being aware of the shape that your fingers are making. So that's the Apan Mudra. This next one here, the Gaian, is really similar, but you're going to be putting your thumb opposite your first finger instead. And in this case, I really like this because I teach this shape, this round C for cello shape with the thumb behind the first finger, when I'm teaching one finger scales for shifting. So this shape here has a lot of applications to the cello. You can put your shape with your thumb right behind your first finger in the first position, and you can practice releasing the shape and then putting it down in different areas of the cello. So shifting down the cello, up and down, maintaining the round shape of the thumb. You'll notice here in this picture that the thumb is a little bit rounded. So you can move it up and down. This is the Gaian Mudra. This one here I absolutely love for being aware of what's going on in your knuckles. So if I bring this closer to the camera so you can see, we make this kind of shape and all of the fingers are a little bit rounded, you'll see that there's a little bit of a curve in the fingers. And what you can do here, a lot of people have quite floppy knuckles, especially in their third and fourth fingers. So what I found with this mudra is if you bring the hand in and then bring it out, in and out, gradually increasing the curl in the fingers as you come out, this creates a sense of balance in the hands and flexibility in the fingers and helps cellists to be aware of what's going on in those fingers and in particular the muscles. So just like this, and it feels really nice. A lot of these mudras feel super nice for the hands. So this position here, the Prana Mudra, I find this very interesting for cellists. So you'll notice in this position, we have the first two fingers opposite the thumb, and then the third and fourth finger in the mudra, they're right next door to each other and straight. Now, many people find this, and I find this quite difficult, to hold the fingers straight. You might find that there's some shaking in these fingers. And if you do an exercise where you bring the third and fourth fingers down and back while holding the thumb opposite the first and second fingers, this is a really powerful exercise for the muscles in the third and fourth finger that often don't really want to work independently. And you can translate that exercise onto the cello again. If you take that shape, you put the thumb behind the first and second fingers, tap the third and fourth fingers on the string in unison, and you're creating a really nice flexibility exercise. Again, notice in all of these mudras that the thumb is a little bit bent. This is a very natural shape for the thumb and creates much less tension than if you hold the thumb straight. And that is true as well for cello playing. This next mudra here, the Shambhala Muja, I really like to combine this with a massage of the lower hand. Often in cello playing at the base of the thumb, we get quite a bit of tension that builds up in here. So doing this Shambhala Mudra, where you take your fist, put it under the hand, and move around the hand with your knuckles, digging into the muscles at the bottom of your hand, can be a really nice way to work out tension in the hand and the palm. And then you can do the same thing on the other side. I can see why yogis say that this lifts the mood and promotes vitality and positivity, because you get a lot of energy flowing through your hands when you do this. This next one is part of a series where we wrap the thumb over different fingers. And what I like about this, the Gaian Mudra, is that it sort of encourages a stretch in each of the fingers. So when you bring your finger and your thumb across, you might feel a stretching or a tightening in the finger here. And you can kind of play with pulsing with that to get control in this finger. You might notice from mudra to mudra that there's certain fingers that that feel very different to the other fingers. You may notice a little bit of pain. If you have any pain, that is an indication that you need to lighten up on the movement that you're doing or stop altogether. We don't want to be in pain when we do this, but if you can tell the difference between kind of a good pain where there's a nice amount of stretching or a tension release and that sharp pain, which means, okay, stop what I'm doing here. So if you do have any of that sharp pain, then stop. But if you feel just kind of a nice tension release, then you can continue with the action. And this is another variation of that one where we're taking the first finger and wrapping the thumb around it like this. With this one, again, I like to exercise the other 3 fingers, pulling them up and down in unison if possible. So those are the 10 mudras. There's actually thousands of mudras that you can do with your hands, but those are some of my favorite ones for the cello. You would try them with both hands. Obviously, we kind of rushed through this because I want to get through the material, but try these mudras with both hands. I will send you a PDF of the entire workshop so you can see the pictures and take your time trying out these mudras and see what you can do creatively with your movement in the hand, and then transferring those creative movements onto the cello, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create awareness in the hands of flexibility so that we can have more flexibility on the cello. So in this next topic, we're going to be talking about how you can use dumbbells to improve your muscle tone and to strengthen the muscles that are involved in playing the cello, in particular in the hands and the wrists and the forearms. So before we do this, I just want to make the disclaimer that if you've never used weights before, you should check with your doctor. You can find and use a weight that's appropriate for you. So some people want to start with very, very light weights. I use a dumbbell that's about 5 pounds for my wrist and hand exercises. Just get those. So these are my dumbbells right here. These are 5 pounds, and I find that that's kind of perfect for, you know, a therapeutic working out of the hands and wrists. But every person's going to have a different weight that they are tolerant of. You can start at 1 pound, and you could go all the way up to, you know, whatever strength you are, right? What I like to do is to choose exercises with your dumbbells that are movement based. So we're not just going to be kind of pumping weights, so that is really good for your arms. We're going to be trying to move our dumbbells in a way that promotes sort of movement strength. And we need that strength, but we also need flexibility, which is why we're going to be doing the movements. And as always, stop if you feel any pain while doing these movements. So the first one I want to show you is called a palm roll. So you're going to take your dumbbell, hold it out in front of you like this, and then gradually roll the dumbbell into your fingers. And what you'll feel when it's right down here, just in the tip of your fingers, is a nice tension. And this actually is a really nice way to kind of strengthen the shape and flexibility of your bow hold. If you pull this over like this, you'll see this is basically a bow hold here, a very, very heavy bow, but a bow hold. And I'm using all the fingers, trying to balance the weight between all the fingers. And you would try that with both hands. The next exercise is called an upper rotation. You're going to hold your dumbbell at the top, put it by your side, and pull it up using the strength of your back fingers. So you're using the third and fourth fingers to lift up the dumbbell. So there's another really great way to increase finger strength. So particularly in your left hand, if you have a hard time with left hand pinky, you can use your fingers to lift up the dumbbell. The next one, which I love, feels like really fun for the wrists and really therapeutic is Twisty Wristies. So just take your dumbbells, hang them by your sides, twist your wrists back and forth. While you're doing this, you want to be maintaining a flexible hold in the dumbbell, but not a tight grip. We're not gripping and doing this. We're holding them in a loose fashion, like this. The next exercise is called a wrist flick. So you're going to hold your dumbbell by your side in the very middle, and you're going to flick it out. Flick it out, flick it in. Flick it out, flick it in. This is really great for the wrist and forearm. Like that. You can try that on both sides. Like this. Then the next exercise, you're going to put your 2 dumbbells in front of you. Hold them at the bottom of the dumbbell, and then you're going to be flicking them forward and then flicking them back, flicking them forward. And again, you're trying to engage the fingers. So you've got your fingers down here. Try to engage the fingers when you flick up. So pull with your fingers. And then the very last one, which I really particularly like for loosening up the upper body, is just swinging your dumbbells back and forth. This really loosens up. Actually, we can do this sitting down. Very much loosens up the upper body. And you can try moving your head side to side. So what I like to do with this exercise is swing my dumbbells for a little bit, put them down, pick up your cello, bring my end pin out here, and then imagine that your dumbbells are still in your hand. Swing your arms side to side. And then bring your arms up as if you were going to play, but try to feel that weight of the dumbbells still hanging off your arms. So then this encourages your shoulders to stay loose and back, and your neck to be free when you're playing. So anytime that you feel some tension creeping up into your neck and your shoulders, try to imagine those dumbbells just kind of holding you down. This is really, really great for increasing your tone quality, because a lot of the time when we're trying to make really good sound, we might be pushing hard, but we don't have that relaxed feeling in the arm of holding something that's kind of just hanging. So we can create really beautiful sound by having a hanging feeling in our arms. And the last thing that I want to kind of talk about in respect to strengthening your fingers and your arms is these tools we can use, grip strengthening tools. So grip strengthening tools, they come in all different shapes and sizes. A lot of them are created by physiotherapists to help people who are recovering from injury. Athletes use them for things like rock climbing in particular. So you'll find these kinds of tools in athletic stores where people need to have a really strong grip. Rock climbers in particular come to mind because they have to have the strongest grip in athletics. So I've worked with a lot of these different tools, and they all kind of have their benefits and their downfalls. So if you take a look at the screen here, so this one right here at the bottom, the ring, I actually really love these rings. These are kind of my favorite go-to tool. I have a set of 3 rings, and they all have different sort of tensions. So the first one is the first one is a 30-pound tension. The next one is a 40-pound tension, and the last one is a 50. And all you need to do with these is you just squeeze them in your hand. And I love this. It feels really good in the hands, and it really encourages nice round fingers, which we need for cello playing, in both hands, right? So you can squeeze the different tensions. I find I'm right hand dominant, so the 50-pound in my right hand is just a good amount of weight. In my left hand, that feels a little bit like too much. Again, the tension and the weight is a very personal thing. You're going to figure out for yourself what tension you need to work on your hand strength. Some people have much naturally stronger hands than others. So those are kind of some of my favorite tools, are these round ones, just because they feel really nice in the hands. If you're trying to develop spread between the fingers, a tool sort of like this one over here on the bottom right, where you put your 5 fingers in and your thumb and you stretch out. This can be a really great way for trying to develop the stretch between the fingers, right? Because this can help us with our extensions and just feeling comfortable in the hand, that we can stretch the hand and pull it back. That's really great. This tool here, over here, this is perhaps my least favorite, though some people really like these. Guitar players often use these. They tend to be, so you put your fingers on either one of these little things at the bottom, and you can work on individual strengthening of each finger. You just have to be careful with these because some of them are very heavy tension. So you want to make sure, particularly if you're working on an injured finger or something that's really weak, that you have the light tension that you need. And then my least favorite tool of all, but I'm going to show it to you anyway because some people might like it, is this kind of spring gripper. It's a very basic tool. You just kind of squeeze and release, squeeze and release. But I find that these rubber tubes do a much better job than the grippy squeeze and release tools. And also those springs have a tendency to break as well. So yeah, so those are the grip strengthening tools. That kind of ends our flexibility section of the workshop. So let's go on now and let's talk about this a little bit. So here's some questions that you can contemplate on your own. If you want to stop the video and write down some thoughts, you might want to think about this and think about the issues that come up for you in your fingers and your arms while you play the cello. What parts of your fingers or your arms or your wrists do you feel like you need to work on? Maybe improving the strength or the flexibility, or maybe you're recovering from injury. And think about what's working well for you and what you think could help you with the problem. So maybe you want to try some of the tools that we've talked about, or maybe you want to do a little bit more research and find out other things, other ways that you can help with the flexibility in your fingers. So one of the things that I was talking about in the workshop yesterday is that a lot of the time with classical playing, we have this tendency to think that we can strengthen our fingers through playing lots of studies. So there's actually a lot of studies out there that are kind of represented as ways to help you increase flexibility and strength in your fingers. And I find that that really simply is not the case. A lot of cellists will sit down and play these studies, and while you might end up with a little bit more facility, the actual physical strength in your fingers and the imbalances that might be there, those are not going to be solved by playing studies. For example, when I got my injury, I was using the high school popper studies, and I was repeatedly, what caused the injury, I was repeatedly tapping my 4th finger down on the cello like this. And you'll see what's happening here. My finger was flat, and my thumb was up by my 1st finger. And doing this basically created a repetitive strain. So what I needed to do here was work on the shape of my hand. My hand shape was not round enough. I didn't have a round enough knuckle shape, and I wasn't supporting that finger with the thumb, and I wasn't using my arm to support the weight. So sometimes the issues that you're having, you're not going to solve those issues by doing more and more studies, because you're going to just repeatedly be doing the wrong thing. So if you are using studies, they're great for working on intonation and stuff like that. Just be aware that they really don't help you to develop strength and flexibility unless you're really consciously thinking about these issues of keeping your hand round and your thumb properly supporting the fingers. Okay, so let's go on to our second topic. Our second topic is a focus topic. And we talked yesterday about ways to reduce performance anxiety. And I put in brackets here, beyond just being really prepared. Because obviously we all know that we have to practice. And probably problem number one for many cellists when they come to performance is that they haven't practiced enough. So you need to have a proper practice schedule, and you also have to be kind of aware of yourself and what level you're at. Sometimes people pick music that's just beyond their level and they don't have enough time to prepare it. And so that's kind of setting you up to have a poor performance. But I want to talk about the things that are kind of beyond that, because we all know that we have to practice more. So psychological studies have shown that we do our best performances in high performance settings such as competitions, public speaking exams, and musical performances when those settings are most similar to the settings that we practice in. So when your practice room situation is most similar to the situation that you're going to be performing in, or vice versa, we do better that way. Many of my students come each week and they tell me, I don't understand, I could play this at home. And that's because of this phenomena that if you're the home environment is where you're comfortable, and when you go somewhere else, it throws you off in so many ways that you might not even be aware of. So this is why sports teams talk about a hometown advantage. So it's not just that they have the support of their hometown crowd, because that certainly helps, but it's also the familiarity of the arena that they're playing in, and this helps them to perform better at home. So there's a very good reason why everyone's practicing and performing really well at home and then coming to their lessons or performances and feeling like they're not doing as well. So what we need to do to start kind of dealing with this is to bring our practice room experience in alignment with our lesson or performance experience. So performance anxiety can be in any setting, right? It doesn't just have to be a performance in a concert hall. It could be a performance, you're playing for your teacher, or you're playing for a master class, or you're making a recording. So what we need to be trying to do is to bring into alignment the environment that we're practicing in, and bringing some of the elements from that practice room to the performance setting, and then also vice versa, bringing some of the elements of the performance experience into our practice environment. So here are some ways that I've come up with that you can start to address this and bringing the two things into alignment. So you can practice your performance in the same clothes that you're going to wear at home. So you would put on your outfit for your performance at home and then practice your pieces. So this is an example of bringing the stage experience to your practice room, right? So you're going to put on your performance clothes, because often performance clothes can be completely different. You might be wearing heels, you might be wearing something tight, you might be wearing something hot. So if you can practice in the clothes, that's gonna, when you go to the stage, you're gonna feel a little bit more comfortable. You could bring the chair from your home that you used to practice on and bring it to your performance so that you feel comfortable on the stage. And you don't have to use some weird chair that you've never used before. You can try recording run-throughs of your performance at home so that you kind of increase the pressure level at home while you're practicing. And this is going to give you a sense of what it feels like to be on a stage. So it's an example of bringing the stage to your practice room. Like if you've got a really cozy practice room and it's got your, your favorite blanket and it's really warm and you've got your nice chair, and then you go to the performance hall and it's cold and you've got a hard chair, those are completely different scenarios, and you're going to feel out of touch, right? So if you can record some of these run-throughs, when you record them at home, you're increasing the pressure level a little bit, not allowing yourself to stop. And if you do that a few times, you get this kind of feeling that there might be an audience there, and that kind of brings those two environments into alignment. You can also practice at home with the heat turned up and with really bright lights shining in your face. Often when you get to a concert hall, there's going to be bright lights, and it's either going to be much colder than you're used to at home or much hotter. So you can kind of play with changing the thermostat in your home or your practice situation so that you can get used to having these different heats or different environments. I actually have a friend, not to say that you would want to go to this extreme, but I have a friend who does guitar concerto competitions and many other competitions. He's won a lot of them. And while he was preparing for these competitions, he would get his girlfriend to throw things at him and yell at him while he was practicing. Now that's very harsh tactics, but what he found was when he did that, he really increased the pressure and increased his heart rate at home. When he got to the stage, he was already ready and used to practicing in that really high stress environment. So that helped him to focus in the high stress environment. You can also bring a comforting object with you when you perform. So when I work with Suzuki kids, and often they can be really little, like 3 or 4 or 5, some of them will bring their teddy bears to the performance. Not suggesting as an adult that you bring your teddy bear to your performance or your mom, but you might want to bring something that brings you comfort. So these are just some of the ideas. There's 1,000 different ways that you can bring your home practice studio to your performance hall or your lesson, or vice versa. You might want to think about some of those ways and just write them down. If you want to stop the video and think about some ways that you can do that and write them down. The second thing that you can do to help your anxiety in the moment is to practice sensory grounding techniques. So sensory grounding techniques are ways for you to become comfortable in the environment you're in the moment by using your 5 senses. And I like to do this. You can try this now with me. You can pick up your cellos. I'm going to try these things while we're seated with our cello. The first thing we're going to do, so you would do this if you're at your lesson or if you're at your performance and you're ready to play. You're going to take a few moments before your performance. You're going to feel your feet on the ground. So sometimes when we're nervous, our feet start to do funny things. They might start lifting. We might start to feel some numbness or tingling. So you're going to feel your feet and notice the sensations where your feet contact on the ground. Think of your feet as kind of trunks, tree trunks or roots going into the ground that are centering you in your environment. You're going to bring awareness to your back body. Now, I'm not a teacher that tells people to sit up straight, because what I found is when you tell people to sit up straight with straight posture, after a minute or two, they get tired and they start to slump again. What we actually want to be bringing to our back is awareness of how the back can move. Right? So you're going to allow your shoulder blades, your spine, the sacrum of your back, and the back of your neck to provide kind of this sensation of support, and also not just support, because support can be, you want to think of your back as like a board, but support is the way that your back can move to support you as you play. So what I like to do actually is ground my feet and then wiggle in my chair, just to bring a sense of awareness to my core. And you can kind of roll your shoulders back, right? So you're wiggling and noticing your back. It's there to support you. Next thing you can do, very important to do this, bring awareness to your breathing. So when we're afraid, a lot of us start to constrict our breathing. And what that does is that it increases the heart rate and makes us feel like our hearts are going to pop out of our chest. So what you can do, and you can do this at any moment, you can do it in your lesson, you can do it just before your performance, it's just going to take a few moments to do some deep breaths, just in and out, let it go, in and out. And don't worry at all about how long this takes. Do it for as long as you need to feel your heart rate start to decrease. You don't want to be starting your performance with your heart just pounding out of your chest. And your teacher or your audience will wait for you to do this. You don't have to worry. I think we have this feeling when we perform that there's a lot of pressure to do it right now. You get on the stage, everyone's really quiet in anticipation, and we think, oh my God, I have to play right away. But you can take that time that you need to develop a routine around getting comfortable. And I noticed that many professional cellists will really take a good 2 or 3 minutes sometimes to get themselves comfortable. Make sure that your chair is the way you want it to be. Make sure that you're grounded and breathing. This can do a lot of good things for you before you perform. And the last thing you can do is use labeling objects in your environment. So this has been used as a therapeutic tool for people who might be sort of suffering anxiety or PTSD even. In a performance situation, you could be have this extreme sense of stress. So this can be a really powerful tool. So what you do is you just take a couple of minutes and you name things in your environment. You name 5 things you can see. So you'll look out into your audience and name them. So if, for example, in my practice room right now, I can see a picture of a cow. I can see a lamp. I can see a chair. I can see my computer, and really take a moment to see these things and label them, right? So you'll label 5 things, and then you would label 5 things that you can touch. So you can touch your cello, you might touch a computer, you could touch the ground with your feet, touch your music stand, touch your bow, feel the texture. And then you also are going to name 5 things that you can hear. So if you're in an audience or in a concert hall, it might seem like it's really quiet, but if you take a moment, you're going to hear people breathing and coughing. Maybe you'll hear a fan. Maybe you'll hear the tapping on the floor. And then some people like to extend this even to their sense of taste. Now, there might not be 5 things you can taste, but there might be a couple of things you can taste. And then other people also like to notice color. So you can notice the color red or the color blue. And what this does, it just kind of, it switches what's going on in your brain to calm down the brain, because you're paying attention in a very specific ways to specific stimulus. And it can be a very powerful tool to calm down your anxiety. Another thing you're going to want to do is to expand your awareness to include your audience. So I've noticed in myself, particularly when I was younger, I would get on the stage and I would try to imagine that there was no audience, and I would kind of look down and I would close my eyes and I would get into my own little world. But what you want to do to decrease your anxiety is actually open yourself up to the experience of having an audience. So what that kind of looks like is that you're going to take time before your performance to look at your audience. You're going to open your eyes, look at people in the front row, maybe give them a smile, look to the back of the hall, and clearly understand. Now, you might want to do this before your performance or your lesson. Clearly understand what your intentions are here towards your audience. Are you here to entertain them? Are you here to share something with them? Are you here to learn? If you're in a lesson, you're in a learning situation. So the pressure is less, right? Your teacher doesn't expect you to play with perfection because you're there to learn. Do you have a message that you want to share? And if you do, you can use your voice. A lot of performers, I notice, will get on stage and not say anything at all. And I think sometimes that can create extra anxiety because there isn't really a connection between the performer and the audience. You might want to take a moment to share about the piece that you're playing and what it is that you would like them to get out of it. This can really create some goodwill between you and the audience and reduce the pressure. And just know that your audience is part of the experience. So it's not just about you. You're not the object creating something for them. It's you and the audience working together to create a nice environment for everybody, or a nice experience. In yoga, this is kind of represented by the idea of a mandala. So mandalas represent a lot of things, but some of the things that they represent are unity, harmony, oneness, and kind of an idea of being in a sacred space, and that everybody is involved in creating this sacred space. It's not just about the performer, it's not you and them, but it's us all together. So you can take a minute if you want. You can stop this video and think about what are some of the ways that you can bring your practice experience to the stage or the lesson, and how can you do the opposite of that? Bring your lesson or stage experience to the practice room. And what intentions or thoughts can you practice before you do a performance or go to a lesson that might reduce your worry? So, in the area of self-development, we talk about affirmations. How can you affirm yourself and take a negative thought and turn it into a positive thought? A lot of the time, a lot of our anxiety is based on what we're thinking about what's going to happen. If we can take a thought like, oh no, I don't know this part, I really suck, this is gonna suck, I'm feeling really stressed, you can take those thoughts and kind of change them into more positive thoughts. Like, I don't have to be perfect. This is just for my teacher. I've prepared really well, so there's no reason that this performance won't go well. I'm really excited to play this music and share my experiences with others. I'm excited to share my progress, right? So try to maybe even write these things down before a performance. The third topic, this is a really interesting topic and really fun. It's going to bring some fun to your cello playing, hopefully. is using the circle of fifths to create simple 3-part improvisations or compositions. And I use that word improvisation or composition because compositions, writing down your music, is really just improvisation slowed down and written down. You don't have to slow down and write down things, but if you want to and you want to create 3-part cello pieces that you can play, you know, either in an app like a cappella or recording them on Audacity, or if you want to play them with other cellists, that's really great. But you don't have to have those composing skills to get the information kind of out of this section. So this particular technique that I use it to create these 3-part cello compositions, and it's really fast and easy. And I've used this technique in music that I've created for podcasts and for film. It creates just this really nice, simple 3-part harmony on the cello. So this is a composition that I created using this method, and I'll include an MP3 separate with this video so that you can kind of hear. I'll include 2 of them that I made using this method, but I just want to take a moment to look over this composition and show you the parts. So you'll see here that there's a bass cello part on the bottom, a middle cello part, and a top cello part. And this is very simple. It's in 4/4 time, and there's different notes in each part. And we're going to go over how I created these different notes in each part and what you can do to do the same. So I use the circle of fifths. If you're familiar with the circle of fifths, if you're not, this represents all the 12 keys in Western music, going around from C at the top with no sharps and flats, all the way around the circle, going 5 notes up, which is why it's called a circle of fifths, all the way around all 12 keys in the Western style of music. We have 12 keys. For each of these majors, there's also a minor, but that's not represented on this particular chart. I wanted to keep it very simple for you guys. So we're going to be concentrating on using mostly notes around the top of the circle of fifths. So this technique that I'm going to show you actually works for any notes on the circle of fifths. So what you need when you're creating a 3-part composition, and this can work, this is so simple that it can work for children as well. So what you're going to need first is a bass line, as I was showing you in the composition. You need a bass line, you're going to need a middle line, and you're going to need a top line, right? So you have a bass line, harmony rhythm in the middle, and then a melody on top. And I have kind of discovered through my experience on the cello that I can more or less break the cello down into these 3 voices and give myself a range for each of these voices. So I consider the bass range notes that are on the C string and the G string. So let's say you're playing in C major. Those notes would be C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. This would be my bass voice. So all my bass notes, this is kind of the set of notes that I would have to choose from this first octave. The middle voice would be the next octave. So if I started on this next C, this is where I'm going to choose my middle voice notes. And my melody notes would be any notes on the A string. So starting on the higher C. And if you want to get really crazy and go really high, there's another octave up here. But you're fine if you want to just make a melody that's kind of that 3rd octave, right? So I correspond these voices. This is my personal method. It's not based on any particular rules, but my personal method of writing 3-part cello music is the bass is the first 2 strings, the middle part is going to be the next octave, and the top part is the next, the A string notes. So that gives you kind of an idea of what the ranges are for these notes. And so the first thing you want to do is create your bass line, right? So I'm going to start with how to create this 4-bar bass line using adjacent notes in the circle of fifths. So notes, that means notes that are next to each other in the circle of fifths. So I'm going to go back to the circle of fifths and I'll show you what notes that I used for my composition. I used 3 notes next to each other. I used the note C at the top. I used F. And I use G. So these are adjacent notes. They're right next to each other. If you wanted to make a slightly more complex bass line, you could add another note if you want. You could add like the D, or you could add the B flat. But I just decided to stick with these 3 notes from my bass line. So if we look at my composition here, in the bass line, You could write these down, or you could also just play them. What you're going to do is you're going to kind of pick a repeating rhythm in the bass line. So you'll see here I picked, whoops, go back there. I picked quarter notes, right? So I'm in 4/4 time and I wrote quarter notes. So in this first bar, I've got 4 C's, right? Like this. Then I put G's in the next bar, put 4 F's in the next bar, 4 G's in the next bar. This is just 4 bars, but you could continue on like that. The rest of my bass line also uses those notes like this. And you can put these in whatever order you want. You don't have to start with C, you can start with G, put F here. It doesn't really matter. I was keeping it very simple, and I recommend if you haven't done this before, keep it very simple. 1 note per bar, pick whatever rhythm you want, but just repeat the rhythm, and like this. And if you are deciding, okay, your piece is in the key of C, right, you would have no sharps and flats, and the only rule here for your bass line is that it would end on a C at the end. So that's how you would make it sound like it's ending in the key of C. Basically, whenever you write a composition, if the last note is going to represent the key, right? So in this case, the C is the last note. So that's how I created that bass line. Very, very simple. If you were doing this by improvisation, you could just think about your notes and play them. If you wanted to write it down, you could do that as well. Now let's take a look at this middle line. So what is going on in the middle line? So let me just go over what we need to do. So in the middle line, or the middle voice, remember I said we were going to use this middle set of notes? So what you're going to do is you're going to take this first bar of notes that you have from your bass line, and you're going to build a chord. So if you don't know how to build a chord using the circle of fifths, it's super easy. Let's go back here. So let's say your bass note is C. And for just the purposes of this composition, we're just going to be using 3-note chords, very, very simple chords. You're going to also take the next note, which is G. So this represents the 5th note of the chord, right? This is your first note of the chord, the C. The one next to it is the 5th note. Already we have 2 notes from the chord. We only need 1 more. The note that we're going to pick, it's going to go in between C and G. So what you think about is your alphabet. Starting on C, I always like to use my hands for this. 5 notes. C, we'll skip D. E is the one in between. F, G. So our notes for the chord are going to be C. E would be in between. And the G, that is a C chord, right? It's a C major chord. If you wanted your piece to sound minor, we'll kind of get there, we would change that note in the middle and make it a little bit lower. But for now, we're just going to stick with major chords. C, E, and G, those are the notes. If you're creating your middle voice, what you want to do is you're just going to use the 2 notes you haven't used already. So we already used the C, that was the bass note. You're going to take those notes, so use the notes that you have not used yet in the bass line for your middle voice. So the notes we have not used from the chord would be E and G. So the middle voice will use the E and G, and the E and G are going to be in that middle range. So starting on the C, here's E, first finger E, and G. So you'll see, if we go back to my composition, that this middle voice right here, I'm starting right here. I didn't create anything for the C chord in the first bar. I just left it blank just for creative reasons. In the second bar, here we have the G on the bottom. So this is a G chord. G chord is G, B, and D. So B and D are making up the middle voice here. So I'm playing B and D. And I just created a different rhythm. So it's completely up to you how creative you are, how advanced you are. This is very simple here. I've got quarters in the bass line, and I created my middle voice using 8th notes, right? So just back and forth, a repeating pattern to go with the bass line. B, D, B, D, B, D, B, D. And then in the next bar, here's a new chord. That's F chord. So if you go to the circle of fifths, here's F. To create the chord, I already know that the C is going to be part of the chord because it's right next to it. And then I pick the note in between F and C, which, if I count up on my fingers, F, G, A is halfway in between F and C. right? So F, A, and C are in the chord. And so that's what you do. You just keep going along, making sure that you're using the chord tones that go with the chord. So far we have a bass line made up of the first note of the chord, and then a middle line that's made up of the third and the fifth, all the way through the piece. Then we get to the melody, and the melody is really kind of fun because you can do kind of whatever you want with this melody. But if we're sticking to our method of using only chord tones, just to keep it super simple, and this is something that you can teach children, right? Because there's only 3 notes to pick from. Makes it very easy. You're going to use the chord tones you worked out for the middle voice, as well as your root note. So this time in the melody, you can use that root note if you like. You can use, for the C chord, you can use the C if you like as your root note, and then you create a melody for each bar. So the rules here, you can use any notes from the chord. So you're gonna have 3 notes to choose from. And you can create your melody using notes on the A string. So that's how you kind of keep the voices separate from each other. You're gonna use notes on the A string. Other than that, there's really no rules. And of course, like in composing, this is a creative art. So if you want to start adding extra stuff in there, that's totally fine. You can experiment with how that sounds. But to keep it simple, and if you're just writing something down for the first time, if you want to know that it's going to sound good, stick to the chord tones, right? And then you can either record or write your melody on top of the bass line and the middle voice. So if we go back to my composition here, you'll see in the top voice, here in the third bar, so again, for creative reasons, I sort of added one voice at a time. I started with the bass, and then I added the middle line, and then I got to the top voice here, and then I added it in the third bar. So here you can see the notes here on the bottom. This is the F chord. It's got the F, the A, and the C, so I'm using notes from that. It's an F, F, A, G in the next bar because that's part of the chord, right? So I'm just picking notes kind of randomly. You don't have to worry too much in this scenario about things like voicing or, you know, where your notes are leading to. This is kind of an experiment to see what happens. And once you have this, what I actually love about creating compositions this way, you create essentially like a sort of a skeleton composition. It sounds really beautiful just on its own, but if you start adding extra things to it, then it starts to sound more and more complex. But you have this nice skeleton chords, and you create this beautiful composition. If you can't hear this when you're watching, just let me know, and I will, I might just post these up anyway somewhere so you can hear these compositions. So some ways that you might refine your composition once you've got that basic skeleton using chord tones is that you could add some dynamics to the composition. You could add some articulations. You could experiment with using major and minor. So remember I said when you pick the note in the middle of the chord, you can either pick that major sounding, like if it's a C, the C and the E sounds major. But if you drop the E to an E flat, it sounds minor. So you can experiment with that, experiment with using the minor chords. You can also experiment with switching voices. So if you write your melody in the top, maybe next time you do this, you could try writing it in the bottom or in the middle voice. So before I kind of end the workshop for today, I just wanted to let you know that if you enjoyed this workshop and you want to learn more and you want to attend more workshops and you're not already enrolled in one of my programs, you can receive a 25% discount off my Cello Yoga online course, as well as the one-on-one coaching packages that I offer. And I'm offering this for the next 2 days after you watch the workshop. You have 48 hours to take advantage of this deal. So let me just let you know, if you haven't signed up for Cello Yoga before, what Cello Yoga entails. So with Cello Yoga, if you were to sign up today, you're going to get lifetime access to the Cello Yoga online program to play with total freedom. So that's all of my video lessons with various Cello Yoga topics. You're going to get lifetime access to all of the workshops like this. So you can come to these. I have these every couple of months, so you're going to be able to come to those for free. You'll get a one-on-one consultation with me, so either online or by email, whatever you prefer. And meditative tracks. I've put together a compilation of meditative tracks that help you to improve your creativity and your focus while you're working through some of the Cello Yoga material. You also get lifetime access to the Cello Yoga private masterclass. So that's like a Facebook group where you're able to ask questions anytime and work with the other Cello yogis on your cello related questions. You also get custom practice trackers to help you with your motivation and to track your skills progress. And you also get custom unique sheet music to help you develop skills that you need to play with focus, flexibility, and freedom. So what I've kind of shown you today is just the tip of the iceberg of some of the topics that we explore in the Cello Yoga program. And if you sign up today or tomorrow, you'll get 25% off all of that. All you need to do is reach out to me either by DM on Facebook or at my email, mia@celloyoga.ca. So that's MEA@celloyoga.ca. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for coming to this workshop. I hope you enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. If you have any questions, you can ask me inside the Focus, Flexibility, and Freedom group on Facebook, or you can send me an email at mia@celloyoga.ca. And I look forward to talking to you more and helping you play with more focus, freedom, and flexibility in the future. Thank you.